Aloha. Welcome to American Issues Take One. I'm Tim Apicella, your host, and today's title is Trump's Wrecking Ball, the First 100 Days. You know, the show is going to discuss Trump attacking the Department of Justice, cleaning out positions out of the FBI, and sending all the inspector generals home. That was before we had a tsunami of bizarre Trump appointment agents, the agents of chaos, Elon Musk and his interns, that came onto the scene. So here we have a non-elected private citizen, although the richest citizen in the world, that got access to our government system, into the employee databases, froze payments of the organizations that he's gone into, and has stopped an entire agency from showing up to work, USAID. Employees that are now on leave, they don't have anywhere to go. And so who's responsible for that? Elon Musk, and specifically Donald Trump. Not to forget that Donald Trump has threatened Denmark over Greenland, not that he's threatening Panama, not that he's threatening Mexico and Canada for the tariffs. This is all happening at once. And at least we not forget Trump's wet dream of kicking out all the Palestinians out of Gaza, and so he could create some beachfront condos and hotels, probably having the Trump name on it. What he said was this is going to be long-term ownership. So I doubt we'll have time to discuss tariffs as a hammer that approach to our neighbors, our friends and neighbors. We won't have time for that probably, but maybe we will. And so here to discuss all of this are my esteemed special guests. With me is Jeff Portnoy, senior partner of the legal firm Cayes and Shuddy, and Ben Davis, emeritus professor of the University of Toledo, and my co-host, Jay Fidell. Good morning, gentlemen. Jay, to you first. Let's discuss this bombshell distraction, and I want to emphasize the word distraction, that Trump says, we can own, this is a quote, we can own Gaza to make it into the Riviera of the Middle East. While this is going on, he's creating a foreign conflict, or conflicts all around the world, or starting to. I thought Donald Trump said he didn't want to be involved in any foreign wars. Your take on this?
Well, there are four possibilities for it. One is it's a huge distraction. That's my favorite theory. Two is it's a negotiating ploy for the Middle East, where he doesn't throw them out and do a genocidal move on the Gazan Palestinians, but he does get to build a hotel. The third is to be the Richard Nixon madman, where nobody knows what he's going to do, and they're all afraid of him because he's inscrutable. And the last possibility is manifest destiny, which is, I think, the least credible. So I would favor, as a lot of the press do, that this is one huge distraction. He's trying to distract the American press, not to pay attention so much to the takeover of the government, which is really insidious, which is happening as we speak, which is happening with Elon Musk, but Elon Musk is fully authorized by him to do it, and it's completely illegal. I don't know if it's gotten to court yet. Jeff, you may know if it's gotten to court, but it should go to court because it's illegal what he's doing. In any event, it's very bizarre. I mean, the case of the office building next to the West Wing, I guess it's the government office building, the Eisenhower office building. What Musk did on the day after the inauguration is he posted a little stickum, a yellow stickum on the door of the computer control room, saying only DOGE, that's all. And when the regular employees started to enter their office that morning, they found that every desk was occupied by a young person, a big young person with a laptop and a backpack. And they were taking control. They got there early. and the regular staff couldn't get in. And that's his style. And you were saying, Ben, well, why don't you just throw them out? Well, it's not so easy to do that. Fisticuffs are really not appropriate, I guess, but a court action is. And I hope that's where we're going to end up, and soon, because he's doing that to many government offices. His belief is that if you control the computers, you control the agency. So one way or the other, that is his direction. And USAID, if you control the money, you control, you do what Musk wants. And I'm sure he's going to go after Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, because now he effectively controls the payments through the treasurer, United States treasurer, to actually cut checks. I'm not sure whether it's passed from read only, which I don't believe, to read and write. He hasn't said that it's read and write, but I think it's coming soon. So if you're on his special list, you won't get your Social Security. Oh, gee whiz, we didn't send that out to you. I think the government has been brought to its knees. It has effectively stopped. And I also think that in the weeks to come, it will be more stopped. That's where we are. Our only, opportunity here is in the courts. And I do not see or hear about enough court actions to match this blitzkrieg.
Let me follow up with a concept. I like to be the name on the 200 million class action suit against Donald Trump and Elon Musk. I don't remember giving anyone authority to look at my records, my Social Security number, God knows what other information that Elon Musk and his interns have access to. And I think that there is a serious breach of privacy here. And forgive me or give me some permission to say, I don't think that's completely legal. And the question is, what are we going to do about it? Jeff, the CIA right now has a buyout plan, if you will, for those employees at the CIA that Donald Trump wants to reduce. That's not uncommon for organizations to do it. I remember years ago, the Boeing Corporation did it. Give them 8-month pay. But here's the deal. If they don't accept the offer, there's termination in their future. I think the FBI is doing something very similar to this. I know you're not an employment attorney per se, but how difficult is it to terminate career service employees? Again, those employees that are not appointed by the agency, but they're career service. How difficult is it to get rid of them without breaching some kind of legal wall?
Well, first, I do a lot of employment law, and it's a complicated issue. First of all, are they civil service? If they're civil service employees, they have rights that Trump cannot infringe upon unless they engage in some type of nefarious conduct, which, of course, in Trump's mind is anybody who did anything that he doesn't like. Then certain government employees, I'm sure, have contracts, and those contracts may or may not designate these employees as employees at will. If they are simply employees at will, if they don't have a contract for a particular length of time, then they are subject to termination, just like you would in the private sector. But these are all distractions. What's happening over in the last 3 weeks is that the country has moved towards a dictatorship, just like many of us predicted. And the only thing that's preventing us from becoming a full dictatorship are the courts. And who knows when that will end as he appoints more and more federal judges. Many of the things that he's attempted to do in the last 2 weeks have been stopped by courts, at least preliminarily. Unfortunately, by the time these work their way through the entire court system, it's time for the midterm elections, because it could take a year or two, depending upon how many appeals Trump and his cronies decide to take. So, I mean, what we're seeing on a daily basis is just what some people predicted. And unfortunately, the country is exactly where 55% of the country wanted it to be. The only hope is that these bizarre things that he and Musk and his cronies are doing will somehow reverberate with at least 5 to 7% of the population that went, what did we do? We want our egg prices to have tripled. We want our gasoline prices to have risen in the last 4 weeks by over 10%. This is the guy that was elected because he was going to lower prices and make things better for the middle class. He's done exactly the opposite with one bizarre move after another. So you get what you pay for. And I say we're moving towards a dictatorship because we no longer have 3 branches of government. We have 2 branches of government. We have Trump and we have Trump. And then we have the courts. You see what's happening in the Senate. It's an embarrassment that these nominees are all being ratified on party line votes. He's threatened every one of these senators, so at least had the audacity to say they were reconsidering how they were going to vote. And the country is in store for at least 2 more years until sane people can take over at least one house of Congress, so we have 3 branches again.
So, Jeff, is the remedy then legal challenges, or?
That's it.
That's it.
And it's happening all over. Jay asked, there's lawsuits being filed even today by groups, by organizations, by individuals. You mentioned the privacy issues, but they have to work their way through the courts. Unfortunately, by the way, we know how Trump views the courts.
Yeah.
So is there any belief that he's going to follow any of the decisions of these federal judges? He's going to appeal it to the end. He's going to deny that these judges have any right to stop him and his cronies from what they're doing. I mean, actually, I wake up every morning and go to bed every night just looking at what he's done during the day. And it's mind-boggling where this country has gone in 4 weeks. Totally down the toilet. And I hope people are happy because this is the man they voted for.
Tim, can I
Yes.
add something to that? Trump has a plan here. Remember that he said, and Elon Musk said, that we're going to suffer. People are going to have pain for 2 years. And after that, they will realize just how right Elon Musk and Trump are. And that reveals a plan, I think. The plan is, and we haven't seen this in its full force yet. He's going to attack the media. He's going to create a situation like with X, and also I think with TikTok, because the government, he wants the government to own TikTok. That means he owns TikTok, and they collectively will come up with an excuse and a scapegoat and a justification for all of what Musk is doing. And they will lie to us about how he is successful in what he is doing. They will find a way to make the public, including that 55% and maybe others, believe that it was a successful venture. True lies, the power of lying and disinformation.
He doesn't have to lie, because you look and see what he's done to the so-called traditional media in the last 4 weeks. He's gotten $15 million from ABC for a libel suit that ABC absolutely would have won, in my opinion. He's now gotten CBS in the last 2 days to turn over all the outtakes from the interview with Kamala Harris. He's suing the Des Moines Register. He doesn't need to lie. He now controls everything with his use of force and threats, and the oligarchs, including the big 5 that now control the media. So, Jay, he doesn't have to lie. He just has to pick up the phone and say, do you want the FCC to take over your license? Look at the new person he just appointed to the FCC. The country is finished. Canada, get ready. We're all coming.
Your optimism is mind-blowing, but let me add
But
that,
true.
that he promised in his rhetoric, in campaign rhetoric, to bring down inflation, to give us a better economy. He's not paying any attention at all to that. Nor is he paying any attention to stopping the war in Ukraine. And I'm not sure what's going to happen in Israel. He may wind up creating a much greater regional war there. So people are going to see that the price of eggs is greater and groceries greater. In fact, our Safeway food store doesn't have eggs. Something is happening here, all right. And I also noticed, Jeff, that despite his threats to the legacy media, the mainstream media, a lot of their stars are either getting much more strident, to wit, Lawrence O'Donnell. His piece yesterday was as
Nobody
strident as
watches MSNBC except you and 12 others.
their stars are actually becoming more strident. What I also noticed, their stars are joining the second tier. They're getting into podcasts, and podcast is the new source for truth. And these guys, Jennifer Rubin, I've seen Rachel Maddow, they're all migrating to podcasts. And that will be where you can get the truth until Trump figures out how to stop it. But I think that people in general will find out that he's making a mess and lying. And the question is, what happens at the midterms? And if you remember Dustin Hoffman, the tail and the dog, wag the tail, yeah. I think he will create another emergency and or have a huge attack on some scapegoat organization or group before the midterms, and then try to derail the midterms. But if the midterms happen, to me, there's a fair chance that people, including people who voted for him, will say, this is not what I voted for. It's not a great chance, but it's a fair chance. Jeff?
He's going to declare a national emergency, and there won't be an election in 2 years.
Okay. Ben, thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Jay. Ben, you've heard the introduction, you've heard and you've seen everything in the last 4 weeks. Of what you've seen, which gives you the most concern and why?
First of all, I would say what gives me the most concern is that people actually are believing that they are powerless in front of this. They're watching it like a video game or something. And what gives me the most concern is that people are not doing the kind of things that they would normally do if somebody was treating them like this, but are seeming to be so compliant. For example, let's go with the, executive office building, little sticker on the door, DOGE, right? And you walk into your office and there's some 22-year-old schmuck sitting at your desk, right? In a normal world, you would ask, what the heck are you doing at my desk? And they could say, Elon Musk put me here. And I said, I don't work for Elon Musk. I work for the American people. Get your derriere out of my seat and leave. That's what you would say. No fisticuffs, okay? In a normal world. But because there's this effort to make people fearful, you find people don't do that. Right now, you see at USAID, right? This effort that's being put forward there. And it's only today that I finally saw somebody do what USAID always used to do, and that's how they got money out of Congress, which was what? To go state by state and indicate what piece of the action each of those states has that USAID does in its work. There are 41 states that have people who are getting financing as part of USAID's work. And they used to go to Congress, people who are against foreign aid, and point out the 33 businesses in their district that are getting some of that money for the work of USAID. And but trust me, that would wake up a lot of Congress people about, we're giving the money away to these foreigners. Well, actually, no. There's a lot of people around the country whose jobs are tied to that. So that's the kind of thing that I tend to think at, is that there's this kind of, we were stunned. And then now the question is, are you going to be in denial? Are you going to bend the knee, as many of our top leaders, so-called, have been done? Or are you going to fight back? And I do believe that there are sufficient numbers of people who will fight back. Absolutely. Because they're going to see that, or they see that this is not the America that they believe in. And that's not a very high level analysis, but it is the one that I think we come to. So what are people doing? They're calling their congresspeople. They're calling their senators. They are going out in the street. By the way, they tell you don't protest in the street because that's what those guys want, right? Remember that one? That's just to keep you from protesting. Did you notice that when people showed up at the Treasury Department building en masse, all of a sudden you saw the White House kind of saying, well, we're trying to tell Elon Musk sort of, he can't do anything. He can't do everything, right? You need to protest every place in the United States, in the streets, against it. You need to talk to all of your political leaders. You need to tell your congressmen and your senators not to vote for any of these nominees that are being put forward. All of these things you need to do. Now, some people will say, oh, Ben, well, come on. They've got the power of the media on that. All of you three, I do believe, are old enough to remember Vietnam, right? You remember what they used to say to everybody during Vietnam? Oh, come on, forget about it. You can't protest. You can't do anything, right? And it took a while, right? I'm not saying it didn't take a while, but it took a while for people to kind of finally start coming around to saying, this does not really make sense. And boy, was our government lying to us. Anybody remember the Pentagon Papers here? Right? There's nothing new under the sun. The question is whether you're going to bend the knee in front of it or not. Personally, my view is that absolutely you need to resist. And any way you can. It may be writing a letter to your congressperson. It may be not buying things from Amazon because they've gone anti-DEI, going to Costco, not going to whatever other place that is doing things that you don't like. There's a bunch of things that you can look at in your own life and in joining with others to resist this and to not be duped by what I consider, and I'll go along with Jay with this, is a lot of political theater. Finally, let us be really clear. What Trump talked about with maybe a distraction in Gaza is kindly called in the real world ethnic cleansing. It's a crime against humanity. Okay? It's genocide. Okay? Those are the words. Secondly, I wrote a piece last Friday that came out of Jurist where I said, return of the torture monsters. Here we go again. And what do I find out? You've got 10 people who have been picked up who've just been sent to Guantanamo. And they are not staying in the immigrant part. They're staying in the part that was set up for the terrorists, okay? These 10 people. Of course, they're saying they're the worst of the worst, right? Of course, that's what they said back in the day, right? But I'm telling you, you have some people who are willing to do things like that. And all I'm just telling to you is that you either going to resist or you're going to live under tyranny. That's all. I mean, it really is down to that. And if you're not willing to resist, if you're not willing to get a little uncomfortable with what you would look at, I'm going to hide out here and do this thing like that. I'm going to keep my head down. Well, then guess what? You're going to live in tyranny. That's all it is. And if you, as one of the preachers at a black church was saying this past week, are we scared? No. Have we seen this before? Yes. Are we going to fight back? Of course. Of course you're going to fight back. What else are you going to do? What else are you going to do? And by the way, I'll just go back to the folks who say, oh, these are like the Nazis. When Germans complained, the Nazis backed off. Then they come back again later, all right? But the Nazis would back off as they were building power until it got to too late. But when people complain, they would back off. So you better keep complaining to make them back off. Personally, I think Elon Musk is going to be fired in a week. Okay?
Well, we'll see. We'll see about that. We can only hope. Let me go on to move to Jay here on this one. Jay is imagination. We have many judges have put injunctions on some of these wackadoodle executive orders, yet it doesn't seem to be taking effect. Elon Musk is still forging ahead with, dismissing everyone from U.S. aid. And what's happening to these injunctions that judges are ordering, yet doesn't seem to be making any impact?
Maybe Jeff knows more about what the actual orders have been, TROs or permanent injunctions.
Okay, Jeff.
But I think Musk and Trump are famous for disregarding court orders and for appealing everything. And if they stay true to form, these orders may not have immediate effect, not until somebody is held in contempt. Your thoughts, Jeff?
I think we're all forgetting Trump's background. He was brought up as a disciple of Roy Cohn.
Mhm.
He was brought up to cheat and lie, not to pay judgments, to bully anybody he could in his real estate business. Nothing has changed. He's just president of the country now instead of the Trump organization. He will ignore and belittle any judge who rules against him. He will do whatever he can to forestall any direct action by appeal. But the only hope is that these injunctions will continue to pile up and that Justice Department won't be able to keep up with all the appeals. But, I'm sorry, but Ben, I think you're talking about a different time and a different place. Even when you talk about Vietnam, we were still talking about a democracy with three branches of government. Yeah, we had people who agreed and disagreed, but we had checks and balances in place. I challenge the rest of you to tell me where in the last month, other than these injunctions, have there been any checks and balances? Look at Congress. There are zero checks and balances. So
Okay.
we're not in a situation where we're dealing with someone that doesn't have a 70-year history of being a bully. His father was a bully. He's going to continue to act that way because he can.
Well, there is one thing that is of interest. We've been trying to figure out what drives Trump. Is it money? Is it power? Is it his legacy? And I think it's simpler. Those things are elements for sure, but I think it's simpler than that. And his greatest tool, his most important and most consistent tool, is public attention. Some of the quotes that are recorded from him back in the time when he was doing The Apprentice were, I have so many viewers. That's like I have so many people appearing at my inauguration. I have so many viewers. I am so successful. And they love it when I fire people. And they come around because they don't know what the result will be. I am a very successful, TV show. And a lot of the promotion was him. And he was instructing the other people in that particular channel, to say the same things. He generated public attention. If you look at his life from that point on, where he fed phony stories by impersonating other people to the press and just try to get as much attention as he could. And this whole blitzkrieg thing that he's doing now, in fact, his campaign before was all about getting public attention. So Kamala Harris comes in with her noble thoughts. And Trump says they're eating the dogs and cats, which was not true, and he knew it wasn't true. But it got public attention, and the press dwelt on that for weeks, even though it was complete poppycock. And what he's doing now in the blitzkrieg is pretty much the same thing. As Jeff said, it's every minute of every day is another news story, putting Trump at the headlines in every paper. The first 5 or 10 stories in every paper in the country is what Trump said and what he did or not did and all that. Now, what the Democrats have to do is appreciate that. That's Trump's main tactic. They have to get into the headlines. They have to make claims and take action and make rhetorical statements and disagree with him at every corner, call him out on every corner. So they get in the attention span too. They haven't done that. And the result is he is succeeding.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Jeff, I want to go to you on this one because let's go down memory lane. When Donald Trump was initially impeached, it was primarily for withholding money, which Congress had appropriated, for the defense of Ukraine. And he said, no, I'm not going to give it to you because, I want a quid pro quo here. Let's put that in perspective or assign it some kind of weighting. And now let's fast forward to where we are now in the last 4 weeks. Multiple lawsuits are being entered. To what degree or when does the I word start to play into our conscience here? The I word being impeachment. Does that happen? At what point does Donald Trump have to completely ignore Congress and the law before someone considers that as an option?
Never.
Never. Okay.
Just look at what's happening every day in Congress. I mean, by the way, a
I
shout
didn't
out
say it
to
would be successful.
Well, I understand anybody can introduce whatever they want. I mean, but give a shout out to Brian Schatz, our own senator, who's come out now and says, I'm not approving any of these appointees. I'm going to hold them up until we get some sanity back in the government. The first U.S. senator to come out and say, I don't have a lot of power, but the little power I have, I'm going to exercise. Instead of making speech after speech after speech like the Democrats are doing, which no one is listening to and no one cares, do what you can with the limited power you have. And a shout out to Brian for finally saying, I'm going to do something. It won't succeed at the end of the day, but at least it shows some resistance.
Good point. Excellent point. In fact, sometimes you build on that which wasn't successful. You keep building on it until it becomes successful. Good point. Excellent. Ben, and I may be encroaching a little bit on our show later this afternoon, but how much damage is being done to our friends and neighbors from the north and the south, Canada, Mexico, Denmark, damage to NATO because Denmark is a member of NATO? Can you imagine the United States going to military conflict with a fellow NATO member? How much damage is being done internationally thanks to the last few weeks of Donald Trump's mouthpiece?
Maybe the best way to think about that I heard was that when Biden got into office, he went over to Europe and he said, America is back. And the Europeans said, yeah, but for how long? So they've had 4 years of thinking, all of these countries in the world, about what America is doing. And I do believe that and this may be hard for Americans to understand, is that this whole vision of America first, which is that somehow the rest of the world has been ripping off America, basically, at least for the last 80 years, the rest of the world has recognized the United States puts its interests first everywhere. It's nothing new for them that they have the United States doing. It's just a question of degree. So that now they have to see, okay, we've got to deal with the person who's going to actually sell the American people on the idea that America has not been putting itself first for the last 80 years. I mean, it's amazing how Americans will buy that stuff. I mean, it's absurd. Now, the consequence is that we have allies who have interests, right? The allies who have interests just look at us and say, okay, now what do we have to deal with? I would tell you that among the people, though, certainly when I was up in Montreal earlier this week, I will tell you, I have not seen Canadians so angry at the United States. Ordinary Canadians, and it pops up through the political discussion classes all the way up to the head of the government. And I don't know what's going on in Mexico, but I suspect, something similar. And why? Because you got to understand this. The tariff thing is just political theater. The so-called extension 30 days thing, Trump did not get anything for it. Canada was doing already what it said it agreed to do. Mexico was doing already what Mexico agreed to do. It was just a saving face thing for Trump for 30 days. Because why? Because the stock markets around the world went hugely south on Monday. That's what scared him. So my personal view around the world is that you just have to watch what the stock markets do. The stock markets were very tough people. They start going south everywhere. They start going south a lot. That will be the test for all of what Trump is trying to do. And trust me, the plutocratic class will respond to that. If they don't respond to anything else, they will respond to the stock markets going south.
All right. Before we go to final comments, Jay, I think I see your hand up here.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, I agree it's going to be very hard for Brian Schatz to do anything right now. I agree the Republicans control the possibility of impeachment, certainly, as they did last times. But if there's many ifs here, if the Democratic Party begins, to get a little noisier, make more complaints in public, take some of the attention, if people realize that the economy isn't doing well and he's not, fulfilling his promises, and if we do have midterms, he doesn't derail the midterms, there's a chance, hopefully a good chance, that what will happen is the Democrats will get control of both houses. And if that's the case, item number one on the agenda for them is to impeach the bugger. That's what has to happen if everything else falls in place.
All righty. Jeff, let's go to you for our final thoughts and comments. We've run out of time, so love to hear from you.
Saw a hat the other day that I was thinking of wearing today, but I didn't get it. It says, "Make Greenland Great Again." I think it's a great hat, and I think it sums up exactly where we are. I don't see anything to be optimistic about. I didn't see anything to be optimistic about in November or September or July when we saw this tsunami coming. I just don't see it. I do agree that there is only one possibility if we survive the next 18 or 19 months, 20 months, is that somehow the country wakes up and realizes that we do care about what's happening all over the world, not just what's happening in our own country, and that people wise up that we're in a lot worse shape 2 years from now, and that the Democrats take at least one house of government. Because if they don't, if the Republicans gain seats 2 years from now, this will not be a place that many of us would want to live in.
All right. Thank you very much. Ben, your thoughts?
The main thought I have is that there's an effort to encourage and instill fear in all of us that has been going on pretty regularly. And the only thing to fear is fear itself, as FDR said. I really want to emphasize to people that you need to do whatever you can where you're at. For your Senator Schatz, maybe that's modest what he can do. But we can do. He can do. And he's doing it. But the one thing is, on the one hand, only having modest power, but the question is whether you exercise it in defense of some vision of America that is not a dictatorial fantasy.
All right. Jay, the last word, please.
Well, I share your pessimism, Jeff. And I worry that with all of these possibilities and scenarios that might put the country back on track, the likelihood is not that. And one of the scariest things that I've heard is the thing about the passports. But let me give you some history. In Germany in the 30s, there were two choices that a Jewish family could make. One is do nothing, be a wallflower, let it pass. It'll pass. He is just a clown, and he will go away. And the other class was the guys who said, "I got to get out of here," and they got out. And there were a few of them anyway that got out. The ones that were inactive, they got to Auschwitz. The ones that got out saved their lives. Now, I don't know if it's at that point, but it could get to be at that point. And when I hear that, passport applications and renewals are being slowed down, I'm saying that the group of people that's pessimistic, who may want to get out of here and avoid becoming a scapegoat or worse, their options are being limited. And that's really chilling, because the likelihood, as Jeff says, is it will get worse. What do you do then?
All righty. Well, before we say goodbye, I'd just like to pick up on something Jeff said. He saw a hat that said, "Make Greenland Great Again." I saw a t-shirt with the image of Jesus in all his radiance, with our arms outstretched. And it said, "Disappointments, all of you." And that's particularly directed to our great Christian nationalist Christians that are supporting this regime. And I'd like to wear that t-shirt someday just in honor of them. So with that, I'd like to say aloha to our special esteemed guests, Jeff Portnoy, Ben Davis, and certainly aloha and mahalo to my co-host, Jay Fidell. I'm Tim Apicella for American Issues Take One. Join us next week, and until then, aloha.